Welcome to Please Me, the award-winning bilingual sexuality podcast bringing you bold conversations and big clit energy. Sí, Please Me tiene subtítulos en español. I'm thrilled to announce that Please Me is the #1 rated sexuality podcast in the USA and worldwide. And welcome to Season 6. I'm Eve, your host, on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation. Join me and my guests as we dive into conversations around orgasm equality, self-love, body positivity, and essential sex education. Let's reclaim pleasure and close the orgasm gap, one empowering conversation at a time. This is part 2 of my conversation with Bev Mitelman, an expert in attachment theory, an essential framework for understanding your own attachment style and why you're drawn to certain partners. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, I recommend starting there for the full context. This eye-opening conversation dives deep into how attachment styles shape our sexuality, relationships, and even how we show up in the workplace. Huge thanks to everyone who's rated, reviewed, and shared Please Me. Because of you, we're now the #1 sexuality podcast in the US and worldwide. Your support amplifies vital conversations about pleasure, healing, and sexual empowerment. Keep the momentum going, leave a review, share your favorite episode, and help us reach even more listeners. This week, I'm shouting out 5 amazing countries where Please Me hit #1. Maldives, Malta, Morocco, Ukraine, and La República Dominicana. Thank you for tuning in and turning up the volume on pleasure. I'm also raising funds for survivors of the devastating magnitude 6.9 earthquake in the Philippines. My editor, who is based there, and her community were deeply affected. She recommended a trusted organization that provides long-term aid to those impacted. Please check the show notes for the donation link. Any support you can give is truly appreciated. Want to ask me a question for the Please Me podcast? Join the conversation on Patreon or subscribe to my Substack newsletter. Both communities give you access to exclusive content, updates, and the chance to have your questions featured on the show. Please Me is for mature audiences, so sit back, relax, and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me.
So if you're having sex with someone who's anxious, preoccupied, they will almost expect that you spend the night. That's sort of like their trade-off, right? It's like, I'm giving you this, now this is what I expect. Because for them, the cuddling, the emotional closeness, the pillow talk, that's what they want, right? So it's like, okay, I'll just do with this part here so I can get to the prize, right?
ASN Lifestyle Magazine is your go-to source for sex-positive, sophisticated content covering everything from the swinger lifestyle and adult entertainment to intimacy, wellness, and more. You can read every digital issue for free, and subscribers get access to exclusive content. See the show notes for the link to subscribe and check out their Instagram. I'm excited to share that I now have a monthly column in ASN called Big Clit Energy, a Please Me series. Don't miss it and subscribe today. Welcome to Season 6 of Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health by turning the sheets into our classroom. If you watched part 1 of this 2-part episode, you will know that I am interviewing today Bev Mitelman, and she is an expert in attachment theory. And so if you didn't listen to part 1, I suggest that you go back and listen to that, because that really gave us a foundation for what we're going to be talking about now. And now we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of sex and how those attachment styles sort of relate to how we act in relationships, depending on what that attachment style is. So welcome back to Please Me, Bev. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about sex. I know the first part was sort of just the foundations, but now we're getting into the sexy stuff.
Yes. I'm excited to talk about this too. And I just want to start from like a place of like healthiness and healthy relationship styles, right? What does it mean to have secure sex?
Excellent question. So I think that sex can mean a whole bunch of things to different people, right?
Absolutely.
And one of the things that plays into this is your attachment style. So generally speaking, people who are securely attached will seek out long-term partners. So in the cohort of people who are who generally marry younger or in long-term relationships, or they desire to have a partner, they're usually more on the secure front. That's again because they've got a good sense of, I know who I am, I'm comfortable, I know my needs, I'm comfortable being alone, and I also desire connection, right? So they feel safe in both of those scenarios. And this extends, of course, into the bedroom, which means that sex for them can mean a whole bunch of things. It can be a source of play. It's of course physical fun. It's emotional bonding, it's all of those things wrapped into one. So it's there to enhance the relationship. It's also, physical pleasure. There tends to be highest degrees of sexual satisfaction within couples who are securely attached, generally because their relationships are running a little smoother too, right? Especially as women, we know that if emotionally things are off in a relationship, we might not feel so comfortable engaging in sex, right? Emotions play a big part of that. But they're very comfortable in communicating their needs and having conversations around, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And so that, plays out really well in the bedroom.
Absolutely. And we discussed vulnerability a little bit at the end of the last show. And how does, let's talk a little bit about vulnerability and how people manage that and that feeling, right? So, because sometimes being vulnerable can be very scary for some attachment styles. Do you want to just go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's a really great point. So people who are securely attached generally are quite comfortable with vulnerability because they learned early on that they could acknowledge and express and recognize their own emotions, and that they were free to express them, and they expected and predicted a healthy response. Right? So they're very comfortable with vulnerability. Where we get into issues with vulnerability is more with the folks who are on the insecure side of things, right? Where they weren't given that latitude to understand their emotions, or if they did communicate their emotions, they were dismissed, they were shut down, they were criticized, they were ignored, they were unseen. All of these things that would signal to a child, I better stop doing that because my caregiver doesn't like when I speak my authenticity. Right. So that vulnerability, particularly in the group of dismissive avoidance, is really, really hard. So should we dive into the dismissive avoidance and what they see sex as?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So, for the dismissive avoidant, sex is usually more of a physical act, right? So, they're much more apt to detach the physicality of sex from love and emotion, right? Whereas the secure couple, it's very much emotional bonding. The person who's truly on the dismissive avoidance side can at times go to extreme measures to make sure that they're not intertwining love and sex. For them, those are very distinct two different things. Sex is physical, and the love and emotionality are something entirely different. Um, they can use sex for control. Oftentimes they'll seek sex, casual sex. So we see a high degree of people in this cohort choose casual sex, which shouldn't surprise anyone, right? Because what is casual sex? Casual sex is, we're going to enjoy each other physically, but we're going to leave out anything emotional.
Right. It's
Right.
unattached pleasure. Mm-hmm.
Unattached pleasure. That's a great way to put it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, with everything I've just said about dismissive avoidance, it would make sense that the casual sex arrangements would be something that would really appeal to them. Um, they are the group who, again, will avoid vulnerability kind of at all turns of the sexual experience, which means like in the bedroom, if we're going to talk about, for example, positions, we know that there are a whole array of beautiful positions in which you can have sex with another person, and a lot of them are very vulnerable, right? A lot of them are face to face. You're
Yes, like a missionary where you're facing each other. And
Yeah.
a lot of people that really love connection say that that's their favorite position.
Yes, right. And and you're staring deep into each other's eyes, and there's a strong emotional bonding component to that. People who are dismissive avoidant, they're they do not want this. They'll go out of their way to make sure that they don't end up in that position, which means that they're much more apt to choose positions where you're not face to face. Right? This
Yes.
is like, it's a subconscious strategy for them. I don't think that like they would know why they're doing it, but if you were to ask someone what their favorite positions are, I could put, $100 on the table as a bet that they'll say, anything that is not face to face.
Yes, and that leads me to another question that I had about eye contact, right? So, what who, let's talk about eye contact a little bit during sex. Why is it so comforting for some people to have eye contact and then really scary for other people?
So it has to do with your level of comfort with intimacy, right? So someone who grew up like who was anxious, preoccupied, who really didn't feel seen, they didn't feel heard, they think that they're unlovable or they'll be excluded or they're afraid that you're going to abandon them. They see, that closeness as the pinnacle of, okay, it feeds them, it feeds their needs for that level of closeness, right? And not everyone requires that level of closeness, but for them it calms their nervous system. For them it feels really, really good. For the anxious preoccupied person, they also are incapable, they haven't learned, incapable maybe is the wrong word, they haven't learned yet how to emotionally self soothe. And so they are so reliant on their external partners. So you can imagine a scenario where someone is so emotionally dysregulated and they're having sex, and then there's this moment where their partner stares deep in their eyes and says, I love you, whatever it is. I'm romanticizing it. For someone who feels unseen, unlovable, who is constantly worried my partner's going to leave me, that is a moment of calm, peace. Like they desire that more than anything. So that's generally what they're after, is that closeness. But for the dismissive avoidant, sex is generally not an emotional experience and they don't want to have those moments at all. Right. So what we see from start to finish in the whole experience is, again, they'll generally choose, if left to their own devices, they'll choose positions that are not face to face. If their partner's like, let's do missionary, they'll probably engage, but they'll close their eyes.
Right.
It's a very so like, I'll ask your audience, have you ever had sex with someone and they closed your eyes, and you notice, or you yourself, do you close your eyes when you have sex?
I do a
And
lot,
I
actually.
do too. I do too. Yeah. Yeah. And
I
so
do. And every once in a while, I open my eyes and say, oh, their eyes are closed too. So I don't feel so bad, right?
right, but like the question is, why am I doing this? Right?
Right,
Why
right,
don't I want to enjoy and soak in the experience of my partner's pleasure? Right? Is it, and subconsciously it's because you're actually trying to eliminate the possibility of pair bonding with that person, because sex can be extremely pair bonding. So people are doing all these things subconsciously, right? These are
right.
some of the behaviors that we see. And when sex is done, if you're having sex with someone who's truly avoidant, there will be no pillow talk. There will be
That
no
after
sleeping
that
over.
aftercare, right,
I
exactly.
mean, they'll
Mhm.
look at you like you have 3 heads. Like, what's aftercare? Like, I'm gonna grab a sandwich and go home. Like, there's no, so it's interesting, right? Because we all have different expectations around sex too. So if you're having sex with someone who's anxious, preoccupied, they will almost expect that you spend the nights. That's sort of like their trade-off, right? It's like, I've given you this. Now this is what I expect, because for them, the cuddling, the emotional closeness, the pillow talk, that's what they want. Right? So that's like, okay, I'll just do with this part here so I can get to the prize. Right?
And then if the person gets up and leaves, that's like massive trauma because you've put yourself out there, did something maybe that you were didn't necessarily want to do. You were looking for that
Mhm.
emotional connection afterwards, and then they left, so you felt doubly bad. Is that like what you're going
Yeah.
at? Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and unfortunately, again, a lot of people who are anxious, preoccupied, they never learned how to identify their own needs or how to communicate their own needs. And so, they wouldn't say to their partner, "Look, it's important for me to have some cuddle time afterwards, and can you spend the night? That would make me feel good." They just get terribly offended that you have to go. Like, how could you do this to me? We just had great sex. They often conflate or confuse sex with love. So
Mm.
someone who's anxious, preoccupied, if you have a really steamy night with them, like their mind conflates the two things. Like, this person must really love me. And the dismissive avoidant is going, damn, that was some good sex. I could use a cheeseburger now.
Yeah, they're
Right?
ready for, to move on. Yeah, exactly. Um,
Yes.
I I heard you say that avoidant people are good with boundaries, and I find that
Yes.
interesting. Why isn't that a good? I mean, obviously, we want to have boundaries, right? Isn't that a good thing? Or tell me the nuance there.
Yeah, it's not I wouldn't say it's a bad thing.
Right.
So they're very protective of their own space, very protective of their time, of their energy, of physically their own body. And so they're likely to say to you something like, I know we have plans tonight, but I have to leave by 10.
Okay.
So they're telling you up front, I'm not spending the night.
Right.
I'll be over at 8:30, but I gotta leave by 10. They're telling you up front, you got 90 minutes of my time. Yeah. So, it can I mean, I personally don't get offended by this. I'm like, you have 90 minutes. Okay, then it's my choice as to what I want to do with the 90 minutes. Or maybe I say, you know what, let's make plans for a day where you have more time so we're not rushed. But someone who's anxious, preoccupied won't do that. Someone who's anxious, preoccupied will generally just, because they're so craving that attention from that external source, especially if it's a love interest, they're generally more apt to just take the crumbs.
They'll take what they can get.
Yes, because and again, it goes back to the low self-esteem, right? Their childhood, they were conditioned to put other needs first, right? And so their needs were last, and they'll rationalize it like, well, not I think he must really like me that he's spending 90 minutes with me or something like that. But so those boundaries are pretty firm. Even within friendships, you see this. Like, it's not just it's most pronounced attachment styles in romantic partnerships, but even in friendships, like, someone who's dismissive avoidant really doesn't appreciate when you just stop by to say hi. I was in the neighborhood, and I don't like when people just stop in. It's like, let me know ahead of time. Right? But people who are anxious, preoccupied love it. If you knock on their door and go, "I was in the neighborhood, I just wanted to see how you're doing," that makes them feel seen and like, they get the attention, they feel loved, and come on in, and the more people, the better. Right? And so attachment styles are so pervasive that we actually see these patterns playing out also into the workforce. Not to get too far off the topic of sex, but for example, there's a large cohort of anxious preoccupieds that choose to become teachers, which is
Okay.
which because they're surrounded by people all day long,
Right. And that
right?
can be very overwhelming for some people.
For me, that would be absolutely the wrong career path. Like, that would drain me. That's
Yes,
not what I
me too.
enjoy. But
I'm
but
better one-on-one.
100%. Yeah.
Yes.
So I definitely do, I'm far more securely attached now, but my patterns of avoidancy do still come up at times. My boundaries are important to me. Um, and another interesting thing too, you'll notice in communication styles, the way that a dismissive avoidant will typically communicate is far more through body language than through words. right? So they haven't really been, it was never modeled for them words for different emotions and that. So they
Right.
often
Mhm.
don't even know how to put words to it, but their body language will tell you everything you need to know, right? So if they're uncomfortable, they'll just get up and leave a room.
Or lack of eye contact.
Lack of eye contact, if you text them and they're uncomfortable with the if they're uncomfortable with the interaction, or they don't want to speak to you that often because they don't want to become bonded to you, they'll take 3 days to respond, one word answers, right? These types of things. So we see a lot of this actually in the dating market today. It's much more common at this point. Like, again, I was single for a few years after my divorce, and I met tons and tons and tons. The majority of the people I was dating were avoidantly attached. Why? Well, most of the people who are in the dating market, sort of in my age group, if they were securely attached, most of them are in long term relationships already, right? So the avoidantly attached person generally goes from partner to partner to partner. They're very open to the idea of having multiple partners, which is great. But in their mind, their strategy is, if I can have multiple partners, then I don't really have to invest too heavily emotionally in just one. So I sort of like could spread it out, right? They're much more likely to have like a roster of partners that they're seeing. They're very, very slow to warm up. They're the ones that we most often find fiddling around in this new age term of situationships, right? Where it's like, yeah, we get along, we have a great time, but I'm not going to define anything, right? Because that's going to trigger my fear response. Um, Now, the interesting thing is that for dismissive avoidance, the core wound that they carry, it is a shame wound. So we go back to childhood when the child didn't receive that emotional attunement, or they were left alone a lot, they were neglected. The child internalized and did this pattern of, there must be something wrong with me. If I look around, my friends, their mothers, are good to them, or if I was better, if I was didn't have this thing wrong with me, then my mother or my father would pay attention to me. And so they actually develop this shame wound that I am defective. And so they keep people at arm's length. Like, people often talk about how dismissive avoidance seem very secretive. They kind of are, not to be malicious, but to just keep people at arm's length, because the thinking there is, if you get too close to me and you see the real me, you'll also reject me the way that my parents did.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
That shame is just so pervasive, and really
Mhm.
identifying that is so important so that you can sort of work through that and eventually throw that shit out, right?
Yeah.
Because it really is detrimental in so many different ways. And we are taught to shame ourselves for so many different reasons, especially as women. So I love that it's connected to actually one of the, um, you know, negative avoidance styles. It makes sense, you know?
Yeah, it makes a
Uh,
lot of sense. And the avoidance will often date the anxious preoccupieds. So, for a couple of reasons, if they tried to date someone who was securely attached, that person would go, you know what? The crumbs you're giving me, not good enough. Thank you. Like, and they would walk away, right? Because they've got a true sense of
yes.
self. But someone who's anxious preoccupied is usually becomes enamored with someone who is avoidantly attached, because they find, for example, their boundaries to be, really empowering. Boundaries is something that an anxious preoccupied person never learned. And so they find that to be, empowering. And there's a level of mystery to someone who's avoidantly attached. It's not really mystery, and it's interpreted as mystery, but it's a disconnection from your own emotions. And so, lo and behold, the anxious and the avoidant often find each other in romantic relationships. That's why we talk about the anxious and the avoidant dance. And it's absolutely a toxic pairing. Unless both of the partners, choose to become aware of their patterns and work through some of these maladaptations that they're bringing into the relationship, right? But in the beginning, an avoidant and an anxious person, it's explosive. It's because
Interesting.
yeah,
Hmm.
because they really, really do meet each other's needs, right? So the um the the avoidant person feels rejected and misunderstood and was neglected, right? And here you have the anxious person who just wants to pour into you, right? And just because they're seeping love out of every pore. They just want love so badly, and the attention they're just pouring into you. And so that dynamic is really, really intense, but it doesn't take long for them to start really triggering their own wounds, because what happens is that as that relationship starts to deepen emotionally, um, there's expectations that come online, right? And the anxious person, again, desires more and more closeness, intimacy, vulnerability, stability in the relationship. Like, they tend to move very, very fast. They sort of want to lock you down. And the avoidant person can sense that neediness. They can sense that, and immediately their nervous system triggers an alarm saying this person is trying to take away my freedom. They're going to impact my independence. They're going to want something from me that I can't give. I you know I they're so generally disconnected from their own emotions that they're really not in a great place to deal with someone else's emotions. And the anxious preoccupied is usually in a highly dysregulated state. So where we see the greatest degree of like emotional volatility is with the anxious preoccupied people. So they tend to feel their emotions in a huge way. And that just becomes overbearing for the dismissive avoidance.
Yes, I could totally I could totally see that that would be a volatile relationship, and the fact that they
Yeah.
gravitate to one another is interesting too. I want to ask you about having sex in the dark. Why would somebody want to have sex in the dark? And I personally have my own feelings about this. I love to have some light on. I like to create the mood. And, I love red light or blue light or purple light.
Mhm,
I just feel like it makes me feel sexy. It also keeps me present in my body. I feel like when I
mhm,
shut the lights off, because I have a history of abuse, I can very easily dissociate during sex. And so
mhm,
I like to stay present. And so visually, it keeps me embodied because I can see in the mirror and I can see what I'm doing and I can feel and see at the same time. So it keeps me embodied. So I'm just
mhm.
curious, what sort of patterns would want to have sex in total darkness?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I would say that it would be more the anxious preoccupied, because they're generally concerned that they are not good enough, right? Or they're concerned, am I doing the right thing for my partner? If I take off my clothes, will they find me attractive? They're never turning off the lights because they don't want to see their partner. They're afraid that the partner won't find them attractive,
Right.
right? And so that's part of that self-esteem issue, right? So I'm going to turn off the lights so they don't see that I've got stretch marks or I've got this or that, because to them, these are reasons that someone would possibly leave them, right? So they're very focused on their partner's needs. But you talk about using like red light and blue light, and I've done all that too before. It's interesting because I think her name is Jaya. She talks about the erotic blueprints. I'm sure you're familiar with it. So I looked into that too because I was noticing my own patterns and behaviors, and I think that separate from attachment styles, there are these different ways in which we get turned on. And interestingly enough, to relate it back to attachment styles, all of Jaya's categories, I fit in all of them.
Okay.
All of which is like it's interesting only because I'm also a fearful avoidant. So because my subconscious patterning was chaos, my home was absolute chaos, completely unpredictable. What I crave in adulthood is novelty, variety, and so I like all sorts and any and all experiences. Like, let's do it differently each and every time. I don't care what we're doing, just let it be different. Right. And so for me, that mirrors that subconscious comfort zone that I have of chaos. Right. So when even if it's fantastic sex, if I do the same thing week after week, I get bored because it's not meeting my need for
100%.
variety.
Right.
But not everyone's like that. Not
Right.
we, you and I are like that, but not everyone is. Many people are more than happy to have sex exactly the same way and to eat the exact same tuna fish sandwich for lunch every day. And and they're good with it, right? That meets their need for stability and security, right? And predictability. So it goes back to your needs. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think novelty is important just to keep the spice of a relationship going over the course of
Mhm.
time. Always
Yeah.
doing it the same way can really get monotonous and boring, even if you
Yeah.
are getting your needs met, right? So I think it's important to sort of like think about sex in terms of it being the adult playground that we are creating for ourselves
Yes.
and really try to make it fun and exciting and, look forward to that time that you have together,
Yeah.
especially in long-term relationships where you have had it, this way so many different times, and creating that space for like creativity.
Yeah, I always say that sex is a form of play. I think when done
Yes,
right, it's a form of play, right? So it and that falls into, secure sex, right? You're concerned about your needs, you're concerned about your partner's needs equally. You can have moments that are just physically pleasurable and other moments that are more intimate. It's a combination of a bunch of things. Whereas someone who's dismissive avoidant, and we talked about on the first part how they're hyper independent, they may often to just choose to have soloed sex because you know what, it's just easier to do it myself. Like, even if they're partnered, right?
right.
So because they're so disconnected from that emotional piece that it's like, okay, I need a sexual release, let me take care of it. It's just easier. So we see that often. So we also see like a high reliance on porn. But there's that particular group too is very apt for, I think we talked about addictions, right?
Yes, and I can kind of relate to that because I'm thinking about my prior relationship and my divorce, and I was in a sexless marriage for many years, and I did rely heavily on masturbation. I mean,
Hmm.
I am a sexual being, and I needed that release, and so
Yeah.
instead of seeking the emotional attachment with my husband, who I felt rejected by many times, I would just take care of that myself. It was easier for me. So I can understand why people might do that. But also, you're missing the point of connecting with the other person if you are in a relationship.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But if your viewpoint is that sex is just a physical release and it's not about love or emotional connection, then you're good,
Right,
right?
right.
Right. And it's like that feigned helplessness we talked about, like, why bother asking? No one's gonna come and help me. Like, so I'll just do it myself. That's what it is. Yeah.
Exactly. So I have a question about someone wanting to face away. Let's say in say reverse cowgirl, right?
Mhm.
But they are secretly fantasizing. So they're not making eye contact with their partner, but they're secretly fantasizing about someone else watching them.
Mm.
Where would this fall in the continuum? And is that a normal situation, or do you think that that is something that's deviant?
Yeah, so
Asking for a
interesting.
friend.
Yeah, asking for a friend. Yeah, of course, of course. So I'm always very careful to not use words like normal or not normal, because I think
Right.
there's a huge variance in the things that we desire
I'm glad you
and
said that. I'm glad you said that. Continue.
yeah. Yeah, like I mean, there's a whole variety of things that turn us on. So, voyeurism or threesomes or all of this can be very exciting. Sometimes also, people choose to watch porn where there's multiple people involved, but they themselves don't want to play it out, but they just enjoy watching that, which is fine too. So, um, generally speaking, it is not an anxious, preoccupied person who is going to want to bring someone else into the bedroom, not even in their dreams, not even
Okay.
in their thoughts or their desires, because again, they're really focused on sex as being emotionally bonding. Right, so
Right.
they will be focused on their primary partner. I haven't come across very many people who are anxious, preoccupied, and adopting, a polyamorous lifestyle. It just doesn't fit with their personality needs. And so, it's probably someone who's either fearful avoidant, leaning dismissive, or someone who's truly dismissive avoidant because they're facing away from their partner. So that's the first clue. And then, fantasizing that there's someone else in there. Maybe they've done this, for the last 3 weeks, and then they bring in a fantasy of someone because they're just trying to stimulate that novelty, right? Which again is so prevalent in the minds of the fearful avoidant. So my guess would be that the person doing the riding the cowgirl backward, that's a fearful avoidant. If I had to guess.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or could it be that if the person is securely attached, but they just like to be an exhibitionist?
Yes, it can be. But person who's securely attached generally has the communication to sit down with their partner and say, you know what? Why don't we invite someone into the bedroom? So they would have actually had the conversation, right? So
And that's where the
um
radical honesty comes in.
yeah, and the safety in the emotional relationship, knowing that I can bring an idea to you and you may like it, you may not like it, but you're not going to shame me. You're not going to judge me. You could just turn around and say, "You know what? I don't think that'll work for me." Right?
Hmm.
So I think that those that are in a secure relationship can have those playful moments and can have all sorts of discussions about it. Someone who's less skilled in communication and these more difficult conversations, they're likely to just fantasize and not actually have the true conversations to say, you know what, let's make this happen.
Or maybe just the fantasy itself could be enough of a titillating experience for
Yeah.
them that they, yeah, that it helps them to, enhance the pleasure that they're, seeking.
It could be, right? And it's what's really interesting about sex and also the fearful avoidance, like those that sort of have the avoidant tendency and the anxious tendency sort of wrapped in one, is that it can go in one or two different ways. We see often this is a harder style to nail down when it comes to sex because we're talking about people who generally experienced abuse. So, especially if there was sexual abuse involved, that really just changes the landscape a lot. I don't generally talk about that, but what I can say is within the fearful avoidant group, what we often see is a large cohort of people who are hypersexual, right? Or people who just decide not to engage in sex at all.
One
So
extreme or
there's,
the other.
yeah, yeah, there's a real dichotomy there. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that leads us, because we're running out of time again.
You and I can just talk all day
I
long.
know we could. I mean, you're like my new bestie. We got to hang out because we could go out and just talk all night long.
We
But
could.
I definitely want to kind of circle back to our role play, and I think that
Okay.
that's going to be a lot of fun. So we
Okay.
decided that the role play that we're going to do is that we're going to be a couple, okay, and you are going to be anxiously attached,
Hmm.
and I'm going to be the avoidant attached, right? Okay, I just want to
Mhm.
make sure that I'm getting it right. I'm looking at my notes here. So we're in a romantic relationship, and we want to try new things, or I want to try new things. And so I'm going to be bringing that up to you, and then you're going to have that reaction on the other
Okay.
side, right?
Excellent.
Did
Yes.
I explain
So
it right? Okay, good.
you did a great job. So your audience
Okay.
knows that this is not Bev responding in a Bev way. This is Bev knowing what she knows about anxious preoccupies, giving an idea of how that conversation might look. Okay.
Exactly.
All
We're
right,
role
let's do
playing.
it.
This is fictional.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
All right.
And action. Hi Bev, why don't you come and lay down with me and let's talk. I want to talk to you about something.
You want to talk about something? You never want to talk about something. What's wrong? What are you upset? What did I do? I did something? You're upset with me, right?
No, 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 nothing like that. Calm down. It's fine. I'm not upset.
Okay.
I just have some ideas and I was hoping that you could be open to hearing what I have to say. I have some ideas about some things that I want to try in the bedroom.
What do you mean some things you want to try in the bed? You want to get new bed sheets? What do you want to try? I don't understand.
So, I have some, ideas, some turn-ons that I would like to share with you, and I would love for you to be open to listening to what I have to say.
Um okay. I think can I get a glass of wine for this? I'm just feeling really uncomfortable. Maybe I'll get a glass of wine and that'll help. Let me just hold that thought. I'm going to get some wine. Hold on.
Okay. All right. Go get some wine and I'll take a glass too. Why not? A little liquid courage, right?
Right.
But definitely, I feel a little bit vulnerable to share this with you because it's a little bit nerve wracking, but it's something that I've been thinking about.
Okay. Well, I had a glass of wine. I'm feeling more relaxed now. So okay. What are your ideas?
So I was thinking that maybe you would be open to a threesome. Do you think that would be something that you would be interested in? Do you think that that could be something that would turn you on?
Um you you want to bring someone else into the bedroom?
Yeah,
You
I just think it would be great. It would be fun. We could like explore our pleasure. We could expand on our pleasure. I want you to enjoy it. And I think I would definitely enjoy having that experience as well. I don't want you to cry and I don't want you to get upset. I'm not trying to hurt you in any way, shape, or form.
but why would you bring someone else in? Am I not enough for you?
That it's just not about not being enough. It's more about just exploring new frontiers.
I know, but we like last week we had really good sex. You said it was really good sex. Were you lying? Were you not telling me the truth? Because you seem to really enjoy it.
It's not that I don't enjoy sex with you. I absolutely love having sex with you. But I want to explore new avenues and I have some, kinks that I want to explore. And I would love for you to like really be open to that.
So like you want me to watch as another girl like does things to you? Do you want me to learn from her?
No, it's not about teaching you anything. I am happy with the way that you and I interact. It's just enhancing our experience. And I'm not saying that every single time we would always have somebody else. I'm just saying that it would be something to try and see if it could, make us both happy. You have no desire whatsoever. It's scary to you.
No, I love being with you. I love you. You're the only person that I see. I don't understand. I thought you loved me too. If you loved me, you wouldn't want to touch another woman. You wouldn't want to look at another woman. I don't understand. This is so hurtful.
I understand that you're feeling vulnerable and scared, and this has nothing to do with taking away the love that I have for you. It's just that I think that it would be something that would enhance our experience and our relationship. I'm not trying to take anything away from our relationship.
Yeah. I don't think, I mean, listen, I love you so much. So that if this is what you want to do, then fine, I'll do whatever it is you want. I love you. I mean, I can try more. I can try harder. I can wear nice lingerie. I maybe I'll do my hair a different way. Like, but I just want you to want me. But if if this is what you want from me, I'll do whatever you want. Make you happy.
That's super powerful. I'm breaking character here because what I don't want is for you to do something that you don't want to do. And it feels to me like right now you're saying that you want to do it only because I want to, not because you want to. And that is not the point. It would be something that we would maybe both want to do. Maybe we could explore something that is not so scary. Like maybe we could, watch porn together and, see if there's something in there that, sparks our interest and we want to bring into our bedroom just between the two of us. I'm just thinking about how can we expand our, playtime and our fun time together. And I just want to be more creative.
I mean, I can be creative.
Okay.
I understand that. I do. I know that sex is really important to you, and I'm afraid that if I don't do these things that you want, like porn and your kinks, and that you'll leave me. You'll go find another woman who'll give you more of what you want.
And that's not at all where I'm going here. Where I'm going is for us to just expand the loving connection that we already have and just add more creativity. So maybe there's some things that you have thought about that you would like to try, and maybe you can share those things with me and I can see if I would be open to that.
I I really like when you hold my hand when we have sex, when you touch my face, when you play with my hair, when you cuddle me afterwards. Those are all the things that I really like. So, yeah, I mean, we could do more of that.
Okay, I am open to all of those things and I appreciate that you shared those things with me because it's so important for me to know what you like so that I can make you happy.
Okay. Okay, so let's do it. Okay, just tell me what you want me to do.
And end scene. I honestly think that role play could have gone on and on also because, I mean, there's so many ways we could go with that conversation, but I think
Yeah,
that was really great. You played that really well.
thanks.
Um,
So an anxious, preoccupied person will always put their partner's needs first. They'll
yes,
always shift the blame to themselves. Am I not good enough?
right.
This and that. They'll always want more intimacy, more closeness, hand holding and sweet gestures. So yeah, I tried to sort of bring that out.
I'm not sure if I played my part well
You
or
did.
not.
You did great.
I was just like trying to, go along with what you were saying. So I think that was really a great role play, and I think it's important to show people that we can model these conversations, and we can see how we can sort of go with the conversations. I think that's really what it's all about is just modeling conversations because we want and I want for everyone out there listening to have that space for radical honesty. And this is a space for radical
Yes.
honesty that we just created.
I agree. And I also was trying to model for the fact of, when you have an insecure attachment style like anxious, preoccupied, That's what the conversation looks like before you become aware, right? So you minimize your own needs, you put too much emphasis on your partner's needs, you become, the people pleaser, overly compliant, always with the fear that they're going to leave you. But the work that I do is really to help people understand, what do I need? What are my boundaries? How do I communicate those things? These are all the elements that bring you into secure attachment. And that conversation would have looked very, very different if I was playing the role of someone who is securely attached.
Absolutely. And, the fear of, you doing something that was outside of your boundaries just to please me made me feel that fear. Like, no, that's not where I'm going at all. I don't want you to just please me just because you feel like that's what you need to do in order for me not to leave you. You know what I mean? So I could see how you brought that in, and that was a really that was a really great and intense, actually, pretty intense. So I was like, no, 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 that's not what I want. That's not where I'm going.
But the interesting thing is that you were very emotionally connected. A true dismissive avoidant would not have the same emotionality that you have. So
I feel like some
emotional
people can
intelligence,
easily take advantage of another person that said, "Oh yeah, well, I'll do whatever you want," and they're
and they
like,
do,
"Bingo, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Let
and
me
they
do what
do,
I want," and they do,
yeah, and
and
they
then you
do.
regret it afterwards, right?
You regret it afterwards, and typically the other person will come back and say, well, you didn't tell me you didn't want it, you said yes.
Right,
So the
exactly.
consent is there, but it's forced in a way.
It's not
um
enthusiastic consent.
it's not an enthusiastic consent, but part of it also is because in childhood, these people didn't learn how to say no, right?
Right,
We talked about how the easiest way to be liked, if you're dealing with a wound of I am unlikable, is to say yes to everyone, to be compliant, to be a people pleaser. So this is a maladaptation that they've created of their own behavior to just, be super easy. I have no needs, everything's good, whatever you say, this and that. And so, that's partly because they don't have the self-esteem to say, hold on a minute, that doesn't work for me. And
right,
also they don't have, the language they've never learned how to say no.
right.
Yeah,
And that, with that being said, I want to just end it with saying that no is a complete sentence.
it sure is.
Yes. And so I want to make sure that my listeners can find you. Where can my listeners find you?
Thank you. So our website is securelyloved.com. We are a group of relationship and attachment trauma practitioners. This is all we do, is work in the space of helping people heal from insecure attachment. We're also on YouTube. I put out a lot of free content because I think this work is so important. So, I want people to learn about attachment styles. Also on Instagram at securely_loved. And we talked about in the first episode too, the great place to start is the attachment style quiz. Just right on the homepage of my website at securelyloved.com. And it takes about 5 minutes. You answer a bunch of questions, and it'll give you an idea of where you fall on the attachment scale. And it's a great place. It's a point of awareness. So a great place to start.
Absolutely. And I took the quiz myself, and I'm actually going to ask my boyfriend to take it because I'm curious where he falls, because, we definitely, have our issues sometimes where I need a little bit more than he's willing to give, and I wonder why. So I'm curious to know where he falls along that continuum, because now that I've learned how to become, or to be in that securely attached place most of the time, right? But I still have like tendencies in the other
Mhm.
areas, right? But
Mhm.
I'm more securely attached. I'm more radically honest and able to tell him what my wants and needs are. But they don't always get met. So working that out and figuring out what your attachment style is can really be a benefit to helping you to get closer in your relationship, I think. So um
100%. And most importantly, helping you to get closer to yourself. So first,
yes,
it's about understanding your own mind, your thoughts, your patterns, and so forth. Why do I think this way? Why do I behave this way? Why am I so reliant on substances when I'm stressed. All of these things, right? So yes, it's about repairing the relationship to yourself. And then,
Yes.
what will come next is smoother, more harmonious relationships with those around you, your friends, your neighbors, your family, and your romantic partners.
Absolutely. I want to make sure that my listeners can also find me. I am on pleaseme.online. That is my website. I have lots of prior webinars on there, lots of education. There's also a beautifully curated sex toy store that you can go check out, amongst other affiliates that I have. I also want to mention too here that the Webby Awards nominations are open. So if anyone is interested in nominating me, I am so proud to say that Please Me is now, it has been ranked #1 in the United States and globally in the sexuality category. And so I'm really proud of that achievement. And I would love to be nominated for a Webby Award, which is the Academy Award of podcasting. So definitely check that out if you're a longtime listener and if you love the show. And please continue to share and rate and, like and subscribe wherever you're listening. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Bev. This has been an enlightening conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed it tremendously. You have a beautiful show. Thank you for allowing me to come on here and speak with you and your audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Until next time. I want to personally invite you to join me on Patreon for ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and early releases. Already, there is a lot of bonus content on there with many webinars that I've done in the past and a show that I've never released to the public before. My show is completely self-funded, and when you are able to support me in this way, I'm able to spread my message of body positivity, self-love, and women's empowerment, and empowerment in general around sexuality around the globe. And so with that being said, I appreciate everyone who has already joined Patreon. And if you've thought about joining, now's your nudge to do so. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.